capture of the deposed Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. A political economist, John Rapley, says unless President Donald Trump plans to make a long-term commitment of American money and personnel, very little may come of his attempt to benefit from Venezuelan oil. Rapley's assessment follows, of course, the capture of Maduro last Saturday morning.
It's a very odd turn of events. I'm not quite sure if there was any grand strategy behind it. I think it reflects very much Trump's approach, which is to go for a big dramatic gesture, get the headline, and then hope that that is it. But the problem is that unless he's prepared to make a very long-term and expensive commitment in both American money and lives, very little will come of this as far as securing Venezuela's oil supply, which he says is the stated intention.
Professor John Rapley, their political economist, he was speaking on Cliff Hughes online today. Now, listeners, you know well, U.S. military strikes resulted in the capture of the Venezuelan president and his wife on Saturday. At least 40 people were killed in the operation. In a press conference on Saturday, Trump said that the U.S. would run Venezuela.
He also said the nation, which holds the world's largest reserves of oil, had stolen oil from the U.S., and that would now be returned to the U.S. According to Trump, oil companies are eager to invest in the rebuilding of Venezuela's oil infrastructure. The U.S. president also indicated that Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, would face similar consequences as Maduro, or worst, if she fails to cooperate with the policy push of the Trump administration.
Now, Rodriguez, who is the former vice president, was formally sworn in on Monday by her brother, Jorge, who is the head of the National Assembly. That's the legislature in Venezuela. In the meantime, in court in New York, a defiant Maduro pleaded not guilty to the federal drug trafficking charges that the Trump administration used to justify removing him under the dark of night from his country.
Translated by a court reporter, Maduro told the court this morning he was captured before being cut off by the judge. Asked later for his plea to the charges, he stated, quote, "I'm innocent. I'm not guilty. I'm a decent man, the president of my country." Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, also pleaded not guilty on Monday morning.
Now, a 25-page indictment unsealed in the Southern District of New York accuses Maduro and others of working with drug cartels to facilitate the shipment of thousands of tons of cocaine into the United States. They could face life in prison, in federal prison, if convicted.
Joining us to discuss further, we have a senior fellow at the Shorenstein Center at Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Professor Richard Parker, and a Venezuelan-born human rights activist living in Trinidad and Tobago, Yesenia Gonzalez. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good. Good. And it's Yesenia Gonzalez. Let me begin with you, Yesenia Gonzalez.
Yesenia Gonzalez, yes.
Yes, Yesenia, the last 72 hours have come and gone very quickly. Development still moving rapidly. What's your sense of what has taken place and the implications for your country?
Well, I do not see if there is any implication for our country now that Maduro is out of power and that now he is before the court. You have to pay for all the horrible nightmare that Venezuela has been going through. He has destroyed a whole country, killed a lot of people, he and his regime. We have serious human rights abuses reaching a milestone in degradation in the rule of law after election, which is with the 27th of July 2024. A lot of reports, unlawful killing, disappearance, torture, or cruel or human and degrading treatment or punishment. Arrest of detention, unlawful recruitment of young children by Maduro supporters, group of arming conflict and very dangerous, like the Tren de Aragua and other groups. Maduro was like, the one who used to control the organized crime, and he had the passing through a lot of drugs, even to Trinidad and Tobago, and it's a lot of wrong things that he had done. Mm-hmm. We're starting to see Maduro as the most evil man in history. We have serious restrictions and on freedom or expression of media freedom as well. Trafficking person, I am responsible of trying to rescue almost about 100 victims that came to Trinidad as a victim of human trafficking. And a lot of us running away from Venezuela to come here for protection. And they got fooled by criminals by bringing them here, rape them, some of them don't know where are they. And it's a lot. I went and get victims of human trafficking on the bush, half naked, bring it in my home, carry to the police. I have experienced a lot of terrible experience in Venezuela as well in Trinidad, There is no credibility except for action when taken to punish offense in Venezuela.
Professor Parker, Yesenia lists a litany of abuses there, and she calls Maduro an evil man. And so my question is, why doesn't that justify Donald Trump's action on Saturday?
Well, that has to happen on the order. We have to actually...
I'm sorry, just hold on. Just hold on for a second, Yesenia. Let me just hear from Professor Parker on this, and I'll come back to you.
Sorry.
So there are several things going on simultaneously. I don't feel that Donald Trump's chief focus is to confront evil in Caracas. I think that there are at least a couple of other layers that we need to consider, one of which is he has made clear that he wants the several 100,000 Venezuelans who were admitted to the United States under special relief because of the Maduro regime returned to Venezuela as part of his much more important to him focus on reducing the number of refugees and asylum seekers in the United States. So that's number one, is that I think that what we'll see very shortly is some sort of agreement that is announced between this government of Venezuela and the United States about, or by the tens of thousands of Venezuelans in the United States. I don't think that augurs well for the human rights situation in Venezuela. One can certainly outline the number of abuses under the Maduro regime, but I don't see how this new regime is going to be radically different, because on some level it's operating under the same pressures from the United States and has pretty much the same collection of political viewpoints that were regnant in the Maduro period. The second is the question of oil, and it's quite clear that Trump is very interested in rewarding large multinational oil companies who he sees as important supporters of a long-term vision for governing in either under him or under those who will follow him. Mm-hmm. So we have a second issue of oil. The Maduro administration had already made clear to Trump that they were willing to let Chevron increase the amount of oil that it was pumping. Secondly, that it was willing to allow ExxonMobil to come back into Venezuela. And third, that there would be an openness on the part of Venezuela to some sort of renegotiation of the terms under which American oil companies' assets in Venezuela were nationalized in the recent past. So I think that while I share this deep concern about the murderous implications of the Maduro regime, I would not for a moment try to present Donald Trump as a man on the white horse who has come to rescue Venezuela from its misery. That's not what this is about.
Yeah, we're up on a break. After the break, Prof, I want to go to the matter of what history teaches us about U.S. intervention, because Donald Trump's response to that question is he wasn't in power at the time. After the break. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores are spending the evening in a federal detention center in New York City. We have with us senior fellow at the Shorenstein Center at Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Professor Richard Parker, and Venezuelan-born human rights activist living in Trinidad and Tobago, Yesenia Gonzalez. Yesenia outlining a litany of abuses, welcoming the toppling of Maduro. Professor Parker urging caution that Donald Trump's motives are not pure.
I wanted to ask Yesenia, Ms. Gonzalez, tell me, President Trump on Saturday afternoon at Mar-a-Lago, are you hearing me, Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes, I do. Yes.
He was asked about the opposition leader Machado, suitability for president. And he dismissed that, saying she's not respected, she's not regarded in Venezuela. Is that so?
No, that is not true. We are very grateful to her because that is how we won the election, the majority, to bring democracy in Venezuela in the 24, the year and the 23rd of I think December somewhere there, and we won the election by the majority, and she was responsible in proving that we won the election, and she had fight for us. She had fight for.
So then, how do you react to the Trump administration supporting the current Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as the person who they would want to see and who was today, sworn in as interim president of Venezuela? I gather we have lost Ms. Gonzalez.
Yeah, and so I want to ask you, Professor Parker, considering that answer from Yesenia, that Trump is wrong, that Machado does not enjoy the confidence of the Venezuelan people, will that not complicate his efforts then to, quote, run Venezuela?
It may or it may not. It may from her point of view, and it may from the point of view of millions of Venezuelans. But Trump has shown repeatedly that he's perfectly happy working with authoritarian regimes as long as the behavior of those authoritarian regimes lines up with his interests. So again, I mean, I would take the warning to Machado as also a signal to the vice president who's just been sworn in as president that he, Trump, and the Trump administration is willing to deal with the existing administration as long as certain criteria are met. And I think those criteria have to do with the return of several 100,000 Venezuelans from the United States to Venezuela. And secondly, a deal on oil that has several elements to it, but which essentially allows American oil companies to return in force and number to run the Venezuelan oil situation and to be paid for what they feel was an inadequate compensation for prior nationalization of their interests. And let me also say, and I think it's a third warning to Cuba, to Colombia, to Mexico, all of which he enumerated in his comments, which seem to be sailing past a lot of reporters. And what you want to do is think about the ways in which Trump is brilliant at managing the press and managing his opponents by keeping them off balance. So in other words, they've moved quickly to overthrow one regime in Venezuela. But what he has done then is to throw off balance the region with the threat that he might move in a similar fashion in Colombia, Cuba, or Mexico. And any one of those three is a volatile situation, and all three of which are deeply concerned about what it is that Trump may be up to. And you cannot underestimate the importance of what he sees as pushing so-called illegals or foreigners out of the United States as central to the domestic politics that will hold his base together. He's interested in that. He doesn't really care about the human rights situation in any country, including the United States.
Yeah. Jasenia, you're back with us?
Yes.
I was asking you your reaction to the position adopted by Trump administration to really work with the current Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, who was sworn in to act as President of Venezuela today. What's your reaction to that?
Well, we still recognize that Delcy Rodriguez, she is not, and she will not be the president. I do believe that she's just there for the time being until they remove all the regiment of cartel and criminal, and she's one of the most criminal ones. She has killed a lot of people. She has committed a lot of crime. And basically, I believe that President Donald Trump, are playing a role in the sense that he's trying to get themselves in Venezuela until they overthrow them as well. They can't say, she will have to call election before a month. In a month time, she has to call election. Remember the overthrow Venezuelan dictator Marcos Pérez Jiménez in January, I think there was the 2010, 1958. There was the United States was also part of that whole riot and problem that was in Venezuela, and there was always interest in having a great relationship with Venezuela, and we always maintain a great relationship with America.
Professor Parker, regional leaders in the Caribbean community, CARICOM, are trying to find their footing. As you said, Trump has thrown the region off balance. World leaders scrambling at the United Nations Security Council today. Several leaders condemned the actions of the U.S. president. But here in the Caribbean, in Kingston, in Bridgetown, in Kingstown, what should Caribbean leaders be thinking about how they should react to what they're seeing, and frankly, the threat to their own sovereignty, as America says, as I saw the president post today, that this is, quote, our hemisphere?
Well, I mean, I think what the nations of the Caribbean and Latin America need to be doing is what they have been invited to do now for 100 years. The United States has been intervening in the Caribbean and Latin America for 2 years. So I don't think there can be any possible leader of any country in the region or population that doesn't recognize this extraordinary pattern in which the United States is more than willing, under the guise of the Monroe Doctrine or under the alleged threat of growing communism, to intervene in these nations. I don't, at this point, have a particular formula to offer that is practical in terms of making a change. All I can do is sadly observe the pattern. And I think that what one has to do is hope for regime change in the United States as quickly as possible, which means, 2028, electing someone who is not in the Trump mold or in the Trump political world as the next president of the United States. There are certainly periods in which the United States has not intervened. There was a long period under Franklin Roosevelt in which there was a discussion of a good neighbor policy. It was never quite as good as it was billed to be, but certainly what you want is a return on the part of the Republic, of the American Republic, to a more passive position in terms of intervention. As you know, I mean, within the last year, I mean, he has threatened to punish Brazil for trying his friend who attempted to overthrow an election, just as Donald Trump did. You have seen him offer covert support throughout Latin America to push center and center-left regimes out of power, all of which have been substituted for by regimes that are much more friendly toward a conservative American business position. So, I don't know what to say. I want to say something heroic and noble, and encourage the people of Central America to rise up against totalitarianism. I think that probably is just smoke and mirrors at this point. I think we need a much clearer understanding of why a somewhat more progressive regime in Washington holds out the possibility of less frequent intervention but I cannot imagine the United States in its current political configuration giving up on what it sees as its right to intervene.
And so in light of that, the Trinidadian Prime Minister, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, she has broken with CARICOM now twice on these matters, and she has aligned herself very firmly with the Trump administration. Can Caribbean leaders consider the government in Washington a friend at this time?
I don't think they should be thought of as a friend. I think that they should be thought of as a dangerous enemy that can be handled in some sense, in a way that makes them less dangerous to countries of the region. But I don't think thinking of them as friends is going to have much of a payoff. I mean, Trump's idea of friendship is, are they working for me, not are we working together?
All right. That's all the time we have for. But Yesenia Gonzalez, thanks much. Professor Parker, thank you very much for sharing with us.